What's good, YouTube? Once again, it's Carnell, Vernon Stewart here for the podcast today for Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. We're talking a little bit about the Auburn Tigers as we do a lot on this channel. Want to go ahead and subscribe to Vernon Speaks Sports. Go to the outside and click on that bell and click all so you do not miss any of the content on this particular channel. Did a segment earlier today on some of the guys that we feel need to touch the ball a little bit more. We talked about Carnell. We talked about Shaun Shivers, and we talked about Anthony Schwartz. Now, in the comment section, a lot of guys talked about the fact that, hey, the reason why these guys probably don't get as many touches is because, one, they like Carnell, he missed a lot of drop passes last year. Also, it was also mentioned that the blocking, from, say, Anthony Schwartz and Carnell. I still think Shaun Shivers got to touch the ball. I mean, one of the fastest guys in the country, really needs the ball in his hands, and we saw what he can do when the ball is in his hands. But some great news for the Auburn Tigers during the offseason, or at least we feel like it could potentially be some great news, is Auburn brought back Carnell Cadillac Williams, as we all know from back in the early 2000s, a part of one of the best running back tandems in Auburn history. They wreaked havoc in the SEC in 2004, on their way to an SEC championship, and arguably could have stated a case and did try to state a case to represent the SEC in the BCS National Championship. History shows that USC and Oklahoma wound up being the participants in that particular game. USC beat the hell out of Oklahoma, 55-19, which led to a large debate to say, hey, Auburn saying, hey, we told y'all we should have been there. And I would argue the case that they probably should. I know they should have been there. Now, USC was a very, very good football team. I'm not saying that Auburn would have beaten USC because they were tough. I mean, those guys were really, really good, led by Reggie Bush. But I think Auburn could have really, really represented a lot better than the 55-19 showing that that Oklahoma presented in that game. Auburn goes on to beat Virginia Tech in the Sugar Bowl, 13-9, a very hard-fought game, very close game, but Auburn pulls that game off, pulls an undefeated season off. Unfortunately, not national champions for that year. Fast forward to 2019, Carnell Williams walks into a situation where Auburn did not produce a 1,000-yard runner for the first time in a long time. This is very uncharacteristic for an Auburn Tiger offense, because most of the success, if you look at the success of all of the winning seasons for the Auburn Tigers, you can trace it back to Auburn being very productive in the running game. And that's something that when we talk about Auburn from a brand standpoint, running the football is part of Auburn's brand. Running the football, we have come to love the gang tackling that Auburn has traditionally done. And that's something I believe in 2019 that Auburn wants to get back to, is establishing that Auburn style of football that we've become accustomed to. Outside of wanting national championships, outside of wanting to compete for the SEC championships, I think the Auburn football fan base and just Auburn in general wants to and needs to reestablish a firm brand of football. Tuberville did a pretty good job of this, had some very, very sound defenses, was pretty productive on offense. And then comes Gene Chizik, pretty much productive on offense, but the defense took a huge step back. I mean, the numbers were absolutely staggering between the Tuberville era, the Chizik era, and then onboarding with Gus Malzahn, continuing the level of offense, but just not getting it done on defense. And that kind of costed Auburn, especially in 2014, as Auburn put up some fabulous numbers offensively, but the defense just couldn't hold. Several games where teams scored more than 40 points against the Tigers that year. Then bring on Kevin Steele in 2016. During his tenure at Auburn between 2016 up to now, Auburn has not allowed more than 19 points per game in any of those seasons. Great situation for Auburn, but the only issue is Gus Malzahn decides to stop calling plays, and now you have a situation where the offense steps back and the defense is actually playing more sound, but not being complemented by a good offense. We feel like this year could be the first time in a long time that Auburn can actually piece the two together. We've talked about that on this channel before. Carnell Williams comes to Auburn as a running backs coach. Did a little time at IMG, made a really good name for himself, coaching some talented running backs. And now he has the opportunity to bring some of that talent back to his alma mater, as he has, some guys that we've already talked about. We've talked about Boobie Whitlow. We've talked about Shaun Shivers, Cam Martin, Shaun Shivers, Cam Martin, Boobie Whitlow, and we've really and DJ Williams, who's onboarded. Also, Mark Anthony Richards, we've talked about before, will be enrolling this particular fall. But Auburn has access to even more talent than what we've talked about before. To start with, let's talk about Boobie Whitlow real quick. Carnell Williams, in an article, talked about the fact that Boobie Whitlow left a lot of yards on the table. And what he's referring to is the fact that Boobie Whitlow, from a fundamental standpoint, really didn't accentuate the possibilities last year. If you noticed on some of his runs, sometimes he likes to try to reverse field as if he's still in high school. Then he likes doing that little crazy double kick step to try to, fake the opposing guy out. But what that does is that slows down his running leverage. Okay, so coming into this year, what I was really excited about of what I saw in the spring game of Boobie Whitlow, that he looks like more of a fluid runner as a running back. He looks like he's a little bit more fundamentally sound. And that could be very huge for the Tigers, because Boobie Whitlow has a very interesting skill set, especially with his ability to anticipate the defender, and he makes some amazing cuts. And to team that up with a little bit, being a little bit more fundamentally sound could pay dividends for the Auburn running game this year, as with working with guys like Shaun Shivers, DJ Williams, and Cam Martin. Now, the good news, some more good news with Carnell Williams coming back, he has a lot of running backs that he has access to this year. Carnell Williams has direct experience as a player at Auburn with sharing carries with another running back. As a matter of fact, he and Ronnie Brown were first-round picks in the NFL, and they shared production in the backfield. That's something that he can bring to the table as far as talking about. He has experience doing this. So he can talk about the psychology of that. He can talk about, hey, don't get down because the other guy's getting more carries than you, but this is where the rhythm is going. He has the hot hand right now. Or if you both have the hot hand, you can just really have offenses off balance. And that's something that's great having, and a lot of people don't account for this, is the fact that Carnell Williams has that experience with somewhat the running back by committee type deal. Now, he never ran, obviously, in, say, a Gus Malzahn type running back committee that we've seen. The best example that I know of is the 2013 year, where you had Nick Marshall with over 1,000 yards. You had Trey Mason with 1,800 yards. You had production from Cameron Artis-Payne, Corey Grant adding about 600-700 yards apiece. And that's kind of what I would like to see Auburn go to into this 2019 season, where you have a serious, real deal running back by committee where you can keep defenses off balance. And Auburn has more than the capability to do this. We think that Auburn will have a viable dual threat quarterback in Joey Gatewood, which is absolutely huge, and Bo Nix as a possibility. But back to Carnell Williams. Carnell Williams has the unique task of getting Auburn back on track to where Auburn will have its first, for the first time last year in a long time, Auburn just didn't produce a 1,000-yard rusher. And in talking about the fact that Boobie Whitlow left a lot of yards on the table, Boobie Whitlow was hurt. You talk about the long run against Mississippi State that was called back, things of that nature, to where Boobie Whitlow was well in hand to have the possibility of having 1,000 yards running this year. In the Purdue game, one thing I didn't see, though, I didn't see Boobie Whitlow with a lot of touches as far as handoffs What you saw from Boobie Whitlow was a lot of wildcat action and some auxiliary action, catching the ball out of the backfield. Very productive in that regard. So it's going to be very interesting to see if Boobie Whitlow will actually be the favorite back. Carnell Williams, like I said before, has a very, very unique task. They call him Coach Lack. Has a very, very unique task of trying to piece this thing together. In his first year as a running backs coach, making the right decision to put the guys in the game, depending on what kind of committee they want to go with, putting the guys in the game that gives Auburn the best opportunity to be successful with the running game, and also the best running back that has the chemistry with the quarterback that will be effective come game time. Another guy that we haven't really talked about is Harold Joyner. And that name has been coming up in the comment section. I actually look at it in the news. Harold Joyner has been garnishing a lot of praise from the coaching staff, from the media at large. And it's a name that no one has really talked about to the level that we've talked about with DJ Williams and Boobie Whitlow and some of the other guys in question. Now, what does Harold Joyner bring to the table? Well, for one, Harold Joyner is a big guy. He's 6'4". He's about 230 pounds. And they say that they like to use the term unbelievably talented. Okay. 6'4", 215 pounds. He came from Mountain Brook, and he does so many things well. He can run the ball out of the backfield. He has very soft hands, and some of the news outlets talk about the fact that he could play the role kind of like what Kerryon Johnson played when Kerryon Johnson was the 2017 SEC Player of the Year in 2015. That year, Kerryon Johnson rushed for 52 yards, for 208 yards, and 3 touchdowns. The biggest thing about Harold Joyner that makes him a little bit different is his size. I mean, the dude is 6'4", 215 pounds. So because of his speed and because of his length, he can create some serious mismatches out in the flat. I really would love to see Harold Joyner on that wheel route that Auburn likes to run, because it's cool to throw the ball, to throw the ball out of the backfield, say, to say Malik Miller, who has soft hands and does a good job as well. But to be able to have Harold Joyner as an option, instead of getting a catch and maybe getting tackled as soon as he catches the ball, you're talking about having the opportunity to create yet another mismatch and yet something else that the defense has to look at, with Harold Joyner catching the ball on a wheel route out of the backfield. Also, with the running backs by committee, it would be nice to know that Harold Joyner is a good blocker. We'll find that out in fall camp. For him to possibly play that fullback / it's just so many different places on the football field that Harold Joyner can potentially play. Possibly one of the most versatile players on in the running backfield for the Tigers. I mean, they even talk about how this guy can line up in the slot and like he's very, very valuable for this particular offense. And then teaming that up with the talent that you already have, Harold Joyner could really be a deadly piece to the puzzle coming into the 2019 season, as to why a lot of folks have some, very, very casual expectations for this Auburn team to be the caliber to make a run in the SEC West. And then, letting the chips fall as they may after the LSU game, putting themselves in a position to really make a push for the SEC West Championship and possibly a berth in the SEC Championship, which would be the second SEC Championship berth for the Auburn Tigers in the last 3 years. Made it in 2017 as well. Of course, surrendering that game to Georgia. And I think with, some of the talent that you got coming back for the Tigers, the depth won't be as much of an issue. If your running back goes down, you're not going into the SEC Championship or a big game with the anxiety of who replaces Kerryon Johnson. Or are we just going to try to roll the dice and hope that he's healthy enough to make it through? it appears that Auburn should not, under any circumstances, have that situation happen this year with the running backs that are returning. Also, to add to this, we saw Mark Anthony Richards, who will be making his appearance as a true freshman coming into fall camp. We also don't know what he will bring to the table, because he actually garnished a lot of comparisons to Kerryon Johnson as well. He was a very fast athlete. He caught the ball very well. I think I remember seeing him returning kicks and things of that nature. So he could also be a huge factor in the Auburn offensive running game coming into this season, which would be very phenomenal. And the thing that I really like about this, guys, is the fact that Auburn has a situation where, unlike last season, we all remember that Auburn suffered and struggled mightily with the third down conversion. Gave the coaches a lot of anxiety play calling wise, because there weren't, or at least they felt that there weren't a lot of options as to who the go-to guy would be on third down situations. That's going to be one of the key factors. Those types of little things are can create the separation between having an 8-5 mediocre year and a 10+ win season, is being able to convert on third downs in the SEC or Power 5 football in general. Because if you can keep the chains moving and you can keep the defense on the field, keep the other team's offense off the field, generate that time of possession, start to generate the miles, that basically the wear and tear on the defense. And with Gus Malzahn's style of offense, I mean, when you get gassed in that offense, that's when the arsenal really comes. That's when you have the long passes for touchdowns. That's when, you catch the linebackers looking. When you start to get tired and you got all these different variations of running and reverses and wheel routes and all these different things. And of course, a quarterback that can run the ball, you create a lot of anxiety for opposing defenses. So I think with this running back deal that Auburn has, especially being coached by Carnell Williams, going to get these guys a little bit more fundamentally intact, could be a huge factor that no one is really talking about. No one in the media really is taking account for as to how dangerous this Auburn offense can really be. Because a lot has been said about the quarterback quote-unquote battle or competition or whatever you want to call it. But I don't think enough emphasis is being put on the running back by committee that Auburn could potentially have. I believe Auburn has, just collectively with all the guys involved, including Malik Miller, who was pretty productive in some cases last year. Not enough is being said about the potential of the running game outside of the quarterback being able to run the football here for the Auburn Tigers, especially having a guy like Carnell Williams as the quarterback, as the running backs coach. So we'll look for this and we will see how this thing turns out. Of course, we have fall camp, which is going to be starting in the next week or so. And Harold Joyner is just a name that I believe just has not come up enough. I know it hasn't come up enough on my channel. Hadn't talked about his talent near enough. Is very, very grossly and negligently overlooked portion of the running game for the Auburn Tigers, because we've been very preoccupied with the DJ Williams and the Boobie Whitlows and Sean Shivers, who are all talented guys. But it's just going to be real interesting to see how the coaches piece Harold Joyner into this possible equation with all of the skill sets that he actually has. And we feel like, based on all of these things, not only will the offense open up, it just has to. The offense just has to be better than it was last year. I understand the offensive line as a factor. We throw them under the bus all the time. But just by virtue of the fact, not only we're giving a lot of credit of, as far as Gus Malzahn calling plays, but just the talent that you have, the opportunities and options that you have talent-wise, this offense just has to be at least a point or two statistically better just by default. And that's enough to get excited about, because if we look at last season for the Auburn Tigers, the thing that really damaged Auburn was not being able to accumulate a lot of yards. Time of possession was absolutely terrible. Not being able to move the chains on third down. Also, another factor that Auburn has really been able to take advantage of over the last few years was Daniel Carlson as the place kicker, kicking field goals. He can kick it from anywhere, 60, 70, well, maybe not 70, but was very reliable as a place kicker. This year, his brother Anders Carlson, only 60%. That's something that, you know, we also didn't take account of, because in the Mississippi State game, Anders Carlson has a chance to at least give Auburn a little bit of momentum. In that game, he misses the field goal. Okay, so those are things that really come together to potentially create a 10+ win season versus an 8-5 season. A lot of these guys have a lot more experience. Of course, the secondary will be a lot more experienced. I'm still questioning the field and boundary cornerbacks depth, but the first two guys are pretty good. In Javaris Davis and Noah Igbenogany. So, I mean, Auburn is in a good position as far, especially, you know, underrated is Auburn's possibility at running back as we go into fall camps. Very excited about that. We've gotten the media days over with. Still got some strong recruiting going on. Picked up on some nice recruits this week, and I'm pretty sure the guys are still out on the recruiting trail and trying to get some guys signed for that 2020 class. Done an excellent job of stockpiling on offensive linemen, which will definitely be needed. Had to go to the junior college transfer market to try to get caught up depth-wise in that regard. So, I mean, the future is looking pretty positive for the Auburn Tigers. Once again, it's Carnell Vernon Stewart here for Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn here on the podcast, talking about Auburn running backs, Harold Joyner, Anders Carlson, the place kicker. And we're looking forward to building the brand of Auburn this particular season. As always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle.